Morning, everybody. It's the House Agriculture and Forestry Committee meeting for the first time. Now that we're back, it's August 26th, I think. And we are going to be hearing about our budget, the rest of the budget. We did the first quarter, and now we're going to do the rest of the budget. And so today we are hearing about the agriculture, food, and markets budget. And we're really lucky to have both Anson Tebbetts, I see Allison has joined us, Deputy Eastman, and Diane Bothfeld. So I'm going to also let you know that all of the documents are on our webpage under today's date, and you can find that by going to the legislative webpage if you'd like. So welcome back, everybody. And Anson, I'll hand it over to you. You can take it away.
Well, good morning, all. Thanks for allowing us in to talk about our budget. And we look forward to working with you over the next few weeks to get this finalized and buttoned up for the next year. So I wanted to maybe begin with just establishing a few updates that we have that will lead us into the budget discussion. It sort of frames what we've been doing over the last few months and will lead into some of the budget decisions that we all have to make. Since COVID, we have been quite busy at the agency through meat inspection, our dairy farm inspections, plane inspection, also our lab in Waterbury, Vale, and not Waterbury, I should say Randolph has been busy, and they've been open, considered essential employees. They've been carrying out all the duties through the pandemic. Some other things that have been added since the warm weather got to us. We added more inspections with weights and measures. They were out doing gas pumps and truck scales. Water quality, of course, has been doing farm inspections and also offering assistance with engineering with the water quality division. Animal health has been out and busy. Also, farm continues to operate with feed testing, pesticide monitoring, also certification and so forth. As far as staffing goes, in our office buildings at 116 State Street, which is the one right across from the State House, we've had a core group of about 4 to 6 people in there, mainly the business office, taking care of some of the financial stuff that needs to be done. So that's been going on. In Williston, only a couple of people go in once in a while to that facility on Harvest Lane. So about a third of the agency staff has been working remotely from home, and will continue to do that on a regular basis until at least January. What we've been working on, we've had 3 significant granting programs that have occupied us over the last couple of months since you adjourned last time. We've launched 3 of them, including the Dairy Producer Farm One and the Processor Grant, which is about $25 million. The Agriculture Fair Grants, which is $500,000. And also Agriculture and Working Lands Program, $8.5 million program. So all those are up and running in various stages. The Agriculture Fair one has closed, and we'll be making some decisions probably by the end of the week for that $500,000 pot of money that's going to go back to our fairs and field days. And we've also been working getting these granting programs, developed, working with our producers and farmers, asking questions, also going over the applications, approving the applications, and making sure that our farmers and producers are getting those grants. So one way or another, we've had about 32 employees at the agency, one way or another, been working on these granting programs. Now, maybe someone that maybe works 1 day a week on something, reviewing grants, applications, or it may be someone like in agriculture development, with a core group there. Most of those folks in that division have been working nonstop on these granting programs. And so they're pretty much full time, and they've changed their work plan just to work on these grants. And that leads us to some of the changes to the budget since we last left you. We've withdrawn the $750,000 one-time request for the Working Lands Program. That was in the governor's original budget, but because of the situation with the state's finances, we are not able to go ahead with that one-time money request of $750,000. The base budget is still in there, level funded from last year's total. We've also withdrawn the request for $25,000 for our ear tag pilot program. USDA wants farmers and ranchers and folks in the cattle business to go to an electronic system. We don't think that one is ready for prime time on USDA, and there's been some talk it's not really ready to go live yet. So we our farm get the infrastructure needed for that electronic ear tag pilot program. We've reduced the internal service fees, about $60,000 there. And then the one that I think we talked about a little bit yesterday with the Appropriations Committee, and I know some of you were a part of that discussion, about $1.5 million of the CARES Act funding. We want to use that to offset some of the general fund expenditures. About 4 out of the 6 appropriations at the agency have been working on CARES work, and these funds will be used to, offset, salaries because that is what they're doing, PPE, leave time, and all the sort of dedicated time to the administering of all these grants and the financial review and the maintenance of these grants, which will continue for weeks ahead of us. So I think that's one of our major things in our budget under consideration. I also want to talk a little bit about another major adjustment in our budget, and that is in the water quality division. We've had to reduce some water quality grants. Our core programs remain intact. The implementation of on-farm commitments, those sort of foundational programs will continue. But we have some of our partners we're going to have to scale back because of lack of resources, mainly because of the Clean Water Fund has taken a hit during this COVID situation because their funding streams have been the property transfer tax and also the rooms and meals tax and also the bottle deposit law. So as Vermont had to sort of shut down for a while, some of those programs lost their funding, which means that we just don't have the dollars that we think we need to continue some of our water quality grants. And those mainly will be focused on some of our partners, the conservation districts, also UVM extension, et cetera. Those are not wholesale, cuts. They still will receive funding, but just not as much funding as we anticipated since the last time we talked. So those are the major highlights. I would say that pretty much it's a level funded budget, except for those, the water quality component and also the change with the CARES funding. Pretty much everything else is level funded. We were able to maintain our most of our granting programs are about the same. So those are the sort of the high level highlights of it. And I don't, Madam Chair, how much you want to go into detail, and I'll let Diane or Allison explain anything that I may have missed. And I don't know if you want to do a crosswalk overview of the various divisions or not. We're happy to do that if you want to.
That would be great if you would do that. And how much did you say that the water quality grants have been reduced, Anson?
That will be a reduction of $619,999.
Okay, thank you. Well, let me stop and ask committee members if they have any questions at this juncture. John O'Brien has his hand up. John, go ahead.
Good morning. Anson, one thing that came up yesterday that I just trying to understand better is the 1.5 million of CRF funds to sort of stand up the CRF granting programs. Just how does that work? I mean, I'm imagining, say, Ryan Patch being pulled off what he used to do, and now he's on the phone with dairy farmers. It's not as if we would pay him twice as much to do that new work. He's just reassigned in some ways. So is it to fill in budget gaps because general funds are down, or is it because people are doing just a ton of overtime? Just some clarity on that would be great.
No, I think it comes to the fact that that's their workload now, and under the CARES Act, we're eligible to charge for that. So it does free up some general fund dollars by doing that. It's important to note that none of this 1.5 is not taking out of any of the granting money that's going to go to producers or farmers. It's just we're charging, the coding of their work for the week is going through the CARES funding, which is it makes it eligible to do that because of what they're doing. And we do have some folks, we have some folks that may be doing 1 day a week, 2 days a week on this, that they've been reassigned to help move some of this money along. So that's how we're shaping it. And, to some extent, it's an estimate depending on, how it goes throughout the next few weeks and months. But we've done some calculations through the business office and Amy, and we believe we're eligible for about $1.5 million worth of help with the salaries and the PPE.
Madam Chairwoman, the CARES Act grants is 1.3 million. The remaining 200,000 is more COVID leave time and personal protective equipment. So it's not all 100% the granting. 1.3 is granting programs, and the other 200,000-ish is more COVID leave time for folks that are caught up in the school issue, or we haven't had anyone out ill on COVID, so that's good for the agency, but also the personal protective equipment. There's a bit of money needed still there. So the granting programs are 1.3 million. The total ask is 1.5, but a portion of that is COVID leave and personal protective equipment and those types of things.
Okay, thanks, Diane, for that clarification. John?
If I could just follow up.
Yep.
So is this true across all the agencies is this money that we appropriated in the Q1 budget, or is it just continuing to flow in, or is it still out there and we need to appropriate it in this upcoming budget?
These CARES Act funds that we're requesting are the COVID leave and the personal protective equipment. It is a continuation, but we need more at the agency, and the 1.3. These are both things that you are taking up in this budget, CARES Act expenditures. So both the 1.3 and the 200,000, the total of 1.5, needs to be approved in this budget. It was not allocated in the earlier budget round.
Okay, great. Thank you, Diane.
All right, any other questions? John, do you want to lower your hand if you're done asking questions? And any other questions at this moment? All right, I'm seeing none. So if you would like to walk through the crosswalk presentations,
Sure.
Those are a little further down. I think page 5 is where the first one is. It's the administrative one.
And I'm going to turn it over to Diane to walk through these for us. And Amy is also, I don't know if Amy's on the line as well, but Amy can help us fill in the blanks. So I'm going to, with your permission, Madam Chair, turn it over to Diane to do the crosswalk.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So the first one up, Linda, thank you very much, is the administration's budget. You can see what was recommended for all of FY21 across the top in the green. We have general funds, special funds, federal funds, and then the CRF dollars for total. The CRF is a new column within Budget World. So we are looking under the CRF grant administration cost, 101,000 offset from general funds that would be picked up. Oh, stay on that slide, please, Linda. So the first arrow, the 101,372 for grants administration, is an offset of general funds using the CARES Act money. But you can see 209,162 is coming in for CARES Act funding. So that is important. We're able to offset general fund costs of really it's people's time. Mainly in the general fund. So the other thing on this budget is the internal service fees, paying for ADS, paying for human resources, paying for the finance and management support that we get. So that has reducing that a bit. Across the board, those were reduced across all agencies and state government. So that's our portion coming out of the agency's administration budget, 27,980. So a reduction in our overall, but those are the two areas for the admin budget. So appropriation. So if you want to go down to the next slide, Linda, food safety, consumer protection. They have a smaller allocation of the CRF grants administration costs, 63,986. We have fewer employees from that division working on the granting program. One of our key employees there is E.B. Flory, the dairy section chief. She has been instrumental in reviewing and managing this application process. She has done great work around the dairy processors. Her knowledge of that has been extremely helpful in the granting program. So that is the main support from food safety, consumer protection to the granting program. And then you can see the other change is the reduction in those internal service fees, some coming out of general fund, some coming out of special funds. Next slide, please. Thank you, Linda. Agricultural development, you can see a tremendous impact there for the CRF grant administration costs, over 653,000 coming in from CARES Act dollars. It is basically all of ag development is working tirelessly on all of these granting programs. They've been involved in the development of the applications. They've been involved in the administration of the applications, reviewing all the education and outreach. Our website is so well populated. If you want information on all these types of granting programs, they've done a tremendous job keeping that updated, updating the FAQs as soon as we get, information in, they're getting it up there on the web. So they've done a tremendous job, but that is a large allocation for that division and offsetting 629 dollars of general funds being backfilled by the CARES Act funding. And then we have the other small portion of the internal service fees downward amount there of 4,426. Next slide, please, Linda. Thank you very much. Public health resource, ag resource management, farm division. They have a small portion of the CRF grants administration cost. That division has been very active throughout the COVID issue of a lot of support to the SEOC, the state emergency management. They had at least 3 staff, if not 4. We had to provide staffing from pretty much March through early June. Daily staffing, every day of the week, staffing of the SEOC. So you see in their numbers, the COVID-19 PPE costs. Some of that is certainly PPE, but that demand of time. If the SEOC is opened again, this division has a tremendous impact on staffing that. So there's some assistance there. They have one person who's putting in about a day a week working on the grants administration. Just it's all they can spare, and it's great. It's extremely helpful, but there's a lot of work going on out there. And then those changes in internal service fees. Next slide, please, Linda. The agricultural laboratory, certainly we're offsetting a little bit of costs there. We have one person from the lab working on the granting program, so doing a little bit of an offset there. And then the reduction in internal service fees, plus some COVID relief on the PPE, keeping everybody outfitted, gloves, masks, hand sanitizer, et cetera, keeping all that up to date and available for all of our staff. Next slide, please. Water quality, this certainly has a different line item. They are helping as well on the CRF grants administration. Some funds coming in from the CARES Act for that division. Reduction in the internal service fees, but also that some PPE costs for them, but then the large cut we spoke of for the Clean Water Fund of $619,999. The next slide shows more detail about that water quality. I think Anson reviewed this, but there's the Clean Water Fund budget of our reduced amount is $3.4 million, $3,408,000. And then the capital bill was approved earlier in your session, and that was level funded for us, or it met our request of 4.294503. So we will be looking, as Anson said, trimming some grants, really putting that priority on the partners who are working directly with farmers. So those who are out on the farm assisting with, looking at ways to mitigate any water quality issues, those that, like the conservation districts that are proposing and helping farmers propose fixes to water quality compliance issues. They're not compliance people. They're out there saying, you need to take a look at this. Here's 3 different ways you could design a fix for this. So we're really prioritizing those boots on the ground on the farms to look at those water quality compliance type issues. Some of the areas that might get trimmed back a bit, rotational grazing is really important, but we may trim that back a bit to a few less farms taking part in that. Also there were some thoughts of expanding some areas around innovative agronomic practices and such, and those they probably will be trimmed back to the basics of getting those water quality fixes done on the farm that truly protect water quality. So I think those are kind of a little more detail on the trimming aspects, but I think our last slide is just a really pretty picture.
Oh,
And there's our fearless leader with his favorite jersey, and a very pretty picture of the mountains in Vermont.
Oh, nice. And Anson, what is that cow's name? You're muted, Anson.
Yeah, I knew I was eventually going to do that. No, I was down at Billings Farm for that one. It was a milking contest, which I believe I won, but I'm not bragging. And then these are the rainbow linebacks from Sandgate or Arlington, I believe. These are the heritage breed you see there in the picture on the right.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry Cynthia isn't here. She
Yeah,
she had a family responsibility she had to take care of, but we'll make sure she sees this.
Those are, I believe, down in Bennington County. That shot is from Bennington County, so we kind of like it. So
nice.
Yeah.
All right.
So questions?
Yeah. All right. Committee, do you have questions about this? I'd actually like to know a little bit. Working lands is always a very popular program because it benefits everyone. 14 counties, many different areas, and I've always hoped that we could increase the base a little bit. And so, can we talk a little bit about how much money has actually gone into working lands with the COVID money, and what we're looking at for the future? If we're back to that base, we've already done something in the first quarter. So what's the bottom line for working lands?
I'm going to defer. Allison, are you on the phone? Allison Eastman, the deputy, chairs that committee, and there are dollars dedicated to COVID into that fund, the $8.5 million that's being rolled out. But that, some of that money does have some restrictions on it because it has to be related to COVID. So it's not like it's, the regular program. But Allison can give us an update of where that program is headed and where the pockets of need are. Allison?
Yeah, so I'm going to hold Diane to keeping me accurate on this, but I believe the base of general fund is $595,000. And, the base, we're still asking for that to be the base to be put in, but not the 750,000 that the governor had in his original ask. So that's what you're seeing for a reduction today. Last year, I think we ended up with 1.3, which included one-time money that the legislature, had put into the program. And you know that the program continues to have more ask, substantially more ask than what we have for money. COVID funds 2. The Working Lands program, and then there was 1 million that was sent to the Agency of Ag of COVID funds, so a total of 3.5. And as the secretary had mentioned, that money needs to be related to loss in revenue or additional expenses related to COVID. So we do recognize, you know, there's the 3.5 plus hopefully we'll get our base of funds in Working Lands this year, but it does limit, you know, the amount of projects that can be funded that are the usual innovative projects that the program funds.
Great, Allison, thanks so much. So it'll basically be 3.5 to Working Lands, but it has to be COVID related. And then the base of 594 for the regular. Is it 594 or 595?
Right.
94.
Okay. All right. Questions about that from anybody on the committee?
Madam, there is some forward thinking, you know, models with the Working Lands. For example, that if you had a cheesemaker who may have been supplying a restaurant or a market in the bigger markets, and then decided to had to put up a farm stand and try to get direct to consumer under the Working Lands COVID money, they would be eligible to do that, or they could use some of those dollars to establish websites and mail order. A number of our cheesemakers, that's what they've had to pivot to, is to get a lot of the cheese in the mail or change what kind of cheese they're making, because a lot of the soft cheeses can't sustain a long shelf life. So they've pivoted that way. So some of those dollars can be used for COVID. So there is some forward thinking there. It's just not as, it's just not the run of the mill regular stuff that comes through the process.
And the timing, and Madam Chair, the timing has to be different. We started these programs, they begin in March and they go through September 30th. So anything that's done within that time frame, as Anton mentioned, of new equipment or new methods or standing up the website or whatever those things are, certainly can be paid for, but you can't put in an application saying, boy, out in November, I'm going to do, that's what we're not allowing. So it's got to be something that is enacted, purchased, has receipts for, even though they may install the, whatever it is in October, but it's bought and paid for in September, so it could be claimed. So it's a nuance potentially, but it is a difference than the traditional Working Lands, where you're planning and plotting of what you're going to do when you get this grant. This is a bit of a switch of, I needed to do these things for my business up to and including September 30th, and I can claim them, but they need to be paid for by September 30th.
Okay, and the start date on that was March 1st?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right, I have a couple hands up. Sharon Fagard has her hand up, and then Terry.
Thank you. So I just want to confirm that what I heard from Diane Bothfield is that, for instance, the dairy farm that I'm thinking of in my district, that of course, like all the fluid milk dairies took a big hit on milk prices, has moved to do direct sales and has had the machinery delivered in order to pasteurize and bottle so that they can sell farm stand as well as in some of the local retails. And this is something they've been doing since March 1st, but they would be eligible for Working Lands grant funds for CARES Act specific. Oh, you're muted.
Yes, CARES Act funding. If they were an active dairy farmer, currently, and now they're transitioning. So they would be, well, they're eligible under our dairy program.
Mhm.
Then they would need to determine which is the best fit for them. Depending on the size of the dairy, depending, you put some caps in, which granting program is the best for them. So they certainly could get a grant under the dairy farming, whatever their cap was, and they certainly can include that purchase of this equipment under their other economic harm. I worked closely with the dairy farmer that was contemplating that early on. So the application's just out in July, and they're like, we're going to buy this equipment. Will the application pay for it? I'm like, well, it depends. So you got to go through the whole application, and there's these caps. So if you know you're going to cap out, and this farm capped out, it was an MFO at 56,000. And then they wanted to add in this dairy processing equipment. It wasn't going to get them more than 56,000. So that you had to look at the whole picture of this application of what was going to be available to you. So potentially, everything they would have claimed might have been 120,000, but you're capped at 56. So banking on the application to give you that cash, maybe not. So it depends. But yes, it was eligible to be charged, but there is the cap. So those kind of discussions with farmers of, yes, you can, but don't think that this is going to be a given that you'll get all the money that you asked for because of the caps. So those conversations were important. If people were thinking, oh, it's July, I'll order this, I'll get it installed before September 30th, the grant will pay for it. And it's like, well, you gotta know about the caps. So don't assume that there's going to be $120,000 here when, well, the biggest cap is 100,000, then 56, then 34.3, and 18.3, I think. Sorry. So that was an important nuance to have those conversations, that just because it's eligible for you to claim doesn't mean that it'll automatic you're paid for everything you claim. There is a cap.
Diane, this is Alice. They also could apply towards the working lands if they were not able to claim all of their additional expenses and loss in revenue. And they capped out in the dairy program. They can then come to the working lands program, correct? As long as they're not double dipping.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Okay.
To be honest with you, I can't remember where that landed. I know that legal was looking into if they could apply to two programs. And I'm not sure what the final determination is on that, but we should probably get the committee back an answer.
Mike O'Grady, you made yourself visible and you've unmuted, so I'm sure you have something to say.
I believe that in the CRF bill out of the Commerce committees that most applicants are prohibited from double applications except for farming, dairy farming specifically. I will find that reference and I will send it on. So Allison, I believe, is correct. Deputy Secretary is correct. That as long as they're not getting paid for the same economic harm, that they could apply to the Working Lands program for additional assistance. And I'll find that reference and send it on to Linda.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Really appreciate it. Sharon, are you all set?
Thank
Okay.
you.
So next is Terry, then Rodney. Well, Rodney's hand went down, so I'm not sure if he has a question. Terry and Rodney, if he has a question, and then Vicky. Terry, go ahead.
I have a couple of maple syrup producers that have asked whether they can apply for the working lands grants for, say, well, the one I'm thinking of is thinking they're going to do a website, and the other one is just general things. So I thought possibly, since the sales are down, they don't have any, they didn't sell anything at, of course, the open house weekend because nobody could come. But I mean, that's normally, $1,000 sales or something that day. So do they qualify for working lands?
Yes, they do. They can claim their revenue changes if they can document it. they can claim other economic harm, but the thinking about a website versus putting up a website. So it's all about timing, Representative Norris. So if I'm going to do a website sometime out in November and I want to claim that, the answer is no. If I did a website back in March and here's the bill, the answer is yes. So it's about timing. It's about everything is documented and paid. So we're not looking out into the future saying, you know, oh, I don't know, I might have sold more in December, I want to claim that. No. Or I might put up a website out in, you know, October, November. No. But if you did it between March and September, paid the bills, you can claim it. So there's some nuance in there, and I'm not trying to be flippant. It's just, it depends. But yes, change in revenue, if they can document it, cost of, you know, standing up a new market, new website, maybe they had to put different packaging or any of those things that have been completed by September 30th are all eligible to be claimed. But you can't reach out into the future and say, sometime in November, I might. Those things aren't eligible.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I don't see Rodney's hand up, so Vicky, you can go ahead now.
Yes, good morning. And I think it was you yesterday, Diane, during the testimony mentioned some numbers like 650 dairy farms active at the moment, 46 goat dairies and 6 sheep. And you were talking about numbers. And I'm just wondering, you also mentioned slightly a bit of a shift where maybe a few dairy cow farms have gone to goat. In general, I'm just wondering, since we met last and the programs have come out, the morale of our dairy farmers, has it been improved at all? Or are we seeing still some more farms going out of business entirely? Just kind of what's the general atmosphere happening right now out there?
I think it's still difficult. I think there's so much volatility and unknown, and it impacts all of us. We're all concerned. What's COVID going to do? What are our markets going to be like? What's next? So I think there's that general unease. Milk prices went down terribly in May. They came up a little in June, came up more in July, but now it looks like September might drop again. So it's a bit of a roller coaster for folks of what's my income going to be. We still see a few going out for sure, but you know, I think it's that air of uncertainty that's pretty much pervasive across the board. For overall milk sales, you know, colleges and schools being open is a big deal for dairy product sales, and this uncertainty of, well, you know, colleges get started and then they have to close, and we're coming up on the opening of our schools, and 2 days a week versus 5 days a week of milk you know, so it's just all these questions of what will the sales be for dairy and what will overall, and how that impacts price. So I think there's concerns out there. I think another level of concern that Deputy Secretary Eastman is so well aware of is some of these drought conditions in some parts of the state are very severe. And will they have feed? Some folks have tried to claim in their work with us around the weather and needing to purchase feed already for their animals because of the drought conditions. So certainly a concern area as well, but maybe Deputy Secretary Eastman would like to talk about the drought conditions further.
Also, as you elaborate some more, what about restaurants reopening to a certain extent?
Yeah, I think that's still a question too. It certainly helps, but we know the volume is not the same. I have had the good fortune to go and eat outside at restaurants, and you know, fewer tables, and nobody's really sitting inside, and their usual capacity is, you know, 35 to 40 or 50 people, and now they're down to maybe 25. So they're just you know, yes, they're open, and I think that's positive, but not at the same extent they have been in the past, not the same volume. So it has an impact. And winter, yeah, what's winter going to be? You know, during a thunderstorm, I went inside one restaurant, and boy, they had tables that were 10 feet apart, which severely limited how many folks they'll be able to have in that restaurant. I don't know how they'll survive. I mean, how can you run a restaurant with, you know, usually 20 tables inside, and now you have 5? I don't know how it works financially. So will they be open or not? And those sales are certainly a concern as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Vicky, do you have any further questions?
All set. I'll lower my hand.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
I know our hay crop here has been about 50% of what we typically would generate. And so while it's not COVID related, it's going to, I know I'm going to be buying hay by the end of the season. So by spring. So it's just, on top of losing 2 sheep and wool festivals that were major income producers for me, there's going to be added expense. I know it's going to be tough. I don't know if Allison, you want to say something about the hay crop this year. I know some places have really suffered down south here. We haven't had really substantial rain since that hurricane that came through. So I don't know about other places.
I will keep it brief. I'll say that along Lake Champlain primarily, it has been extreme drought. And in fact, those that say it will be a tough winter, I'll let you know that Addison County farmers and some in southern Chittenden County are saying that it is already a tough summer. They are buying hay. I heard from an organic farmer who grazes that he spent $10,000 in hay this summer, and obviously has not been able to get in the hay that they'll need for the full winter. Just heard from a conventional dairy farmer that he harvested 30 acres and got 1.5 round bales. Currently, the secretary has asked that we work with FSA, and they've been great in coordinating with us. And you'll notice that we did put out a social media blast and also emails on our listserv this week to work with those farmers in that area. And we would encourage them to report their losses to FSA. And what we're trying to do is gather data to see if we have enough information so that we can bring that to the governor in hopes that we may be able to put in a declaration for disaster in that area. So we'll wait and see if FSA gathers enough data to think that's possible. And then we'll bring that back to Hanson to see if it's worth bringing to the governor. But the drought maps don't really show it. And so that's why it cannot be a federal declaration that's automatically claimed. So we'll do the work that we need to see if we can assist these farmers. But it's devastating. The corn crop planted before Memorial Day has not even germinated in some areas. And then other areas, you'll see it 6 to 12 inches tall. The farmers are now going through and no-till sorghum and other crops being planted in there in hopes that they can get something rather than nothing this fall. But it's very sad to see.
Yeah. Anson, I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, it's just one of those that, particularly those that graze and have pastures. I know that's going to be a challenge for a lot of them because they're running out of they're running out of great feed on their pastures, and of course the yields on hay certainly will be down. I think last year a number of farmers may have gotten four crops. This year I think they'll be very lucky if they get 3. So that kind of stuff we really need to document and get it to FSA. Madam Chair, if I could put a plug into something that's not necessarily in this budget, but that will come before the General Assembly, and which is important to agriculture. So there's this extra $133 million of CARES money that has to be distributed that the administration has put forward. I think there's some pockets there that would be well served for agriculture. If I can speak maybe to the gift cards, we're going to call them gift cards. And Diane spoke about, restaurants, someone could spend that and get that card and go to a restaurant and have a meal and support some local farmers that supply that. But it also could be, you might be able to use that money to enroll in a CSA or bring it to a farmer's market or something that it wanted to enroll in the program. So I think it goes beyond, it goes beyond just, regular commerce. And the idea behind that is it's a really strong buy local program. I think we're in a position now where our public and our consumers are really focused on buying local. And I believe that that gift card proposal that's before you all might benefit agriculture. There's also a pocket for marketing, and I believe marketing works. And I think that also could benefit agriculture. There's $10 million proposal before the legislature that would allow it to do more marketing. And I think that would help our producers. Could we get some marketing dollars to our farmers, for websites, for how to operate really creative social media platforms to tell their story, get some training. All those things I think would be really valuable, because I think when we think of just traditional marketing, we think maybe just, bringing folks from away, but I think there's a pocket in there for agriculture where we could really emphasize to buy local products and put some juice behind some marketing dollars, and also allow our producers and farmers to learn about some tricks and trades that they could do and take some courses, etc. Maybe some seed money to do that. So I think there's an opportunity in some of those areas that may not come before this committee, but if you have a chance to weigh in, I think it would be important that we focus on marketing is important for agriculture. And also these gift cards could also benefit a number of our farmers and producers, and giving people some extra money in their pocket to spend locally. So I just wanted to put that plug in when I had the chance.
Okay, thanks, Anson. Yeah, I'm not quite sure which committee is going to be handling that, but we'll keep that in mind. One thing that I wanted to mention is I've heard from a number of organizations about a requirement, and of course this was not a piece. The non-dairy ag piece was not something that we worked extensively on. That came from the Senate, and one of the complaints I'm hearing is that there's a section in 138 that requires that a farmer not have a net business profit between March 1st and August 1st. And that, for some of us, that's not a problem, but for others, just the timing of it is problematic. And I'm wondering what the thought process, and Mike O'Grady, you were there, so maybe you can remember why that was included.
Sure. During the drafting, there was input that some farmers may really be doing well because of the increased demand for local product, increased demand for CSA shares, etc. That there might be farmers that are doing well, and you didn't want to reward those farmers, even if they had some cost or expenses that were incurred due to COVID. I think the concern that you're probably hearing now is that many of those non-dairy farmers are arguing that during that period, they may have had a profit because people were enrolling in CSAs or were buying more local meat or dairy or produce. But in comparison to previous years, they've actually had significant losses. And they feel it's inequitable that the dairy and producers and processors don't have that same eligibility requirement, and they are looking to have that struck from the program.
So, Madam Chair, I think it's important to review the eligibility flow chart from the agency's website, that we have this set up that the working lands and the S351 and the H966 and H961 are combined into one application. And so if you're moving through that application and you come to that question where it asks were you profitable? Did your business have a net profit for the period of March 1 to August 1? The answer is yes. You're not automatically booted out. You're shifted over into the working lands. The applicant will not, they have to answer the questions. They're not seeing you're no longer eligible for the S351 dollars. Now you have to go over here. It's automatic. You're still eligible. They're eligible for funding under the working lands, which had a different set of criteria than the S351. So automatically in our application, depending on how you answer these questions, you're still eligible for a grant it's a different pot of money in this non-dairy working lands granting program.
And you might be actually eligible for more than you would under the non-dairy program.
Correct.
Great. Well, thank you so much for clarifying that. I really appreciate that.
So some of
I'm
these,
sure.
we're a little concerned, pardon me, Madam Chair, we're a little
No,
concerned
go
that
ahead.
we're a little concerned that some of these concerns came before the application even was live. So hopefully people are taking a look at this now and determining that, oh, it's not a making me ineligible. So hopefully that will alleviate some of the concerns. The concern about inequities between one type of granting code program, as in the dairy application versus the others, that's something, you know, that could certainly be addressed, but difficult to look at since everything's in progress.
The other issue that the non-dairy people are bringing up is the reversion language, which gives the secretary the authority to reallocate the non-dairy money to the dairy program if there's money in the non-dairy program as of September 15th. Those interested parties are saying because the application for the non-dairy program just went live, Diane, was it last week? That it's kind of unfair to give them less than a month before the secretary has the authority to reallocate the money. To extent that on paper, first blush, that seems a rational argument, but the dairy program basically has to exhaust its funds before the secretary really has the ability to reallocate. And the dairy program's not there yet. But you might see a push to move that reversion date. And it probably, you know, in the end, it might not really have an effect at all, but it could provide comfort to those in the non-dairy sector about that reallocation.
And at this point, I think I've seen reports on this, but how much of the dairy sector money has been expended or granted, and how much has been applied for? I know we had 21.2 million in for dairy and for dairy producers, and 3.8 for the processors. Am I correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. And I would just say that we're not anywhere close to exhausting the funds yet. So I think as of yesterday, we're close to $4 million that either been paid out or is in the process of being paid out. About 55% of the population that's eligible for the dairy dollars has taken out the application, started it, or been paid out. So we have a ways to go, and I would encourage the committee to really both sides of this. I mean, we haven't been overwhelmed yet with also the working lands applications yet. I know it's just going to take some time and effort, but I know some deadlines are approaching, and we talked about that yesterday a little bit. Pushing some deadlines out, I don't think is going to, hurt the program. It might help the program. It might help our farmers get more time to, get their paperwork in, and also the financial situation of some of these farmers may be different in August and September than it was in March. So we talked about extending the deadlines on some of these applications, and we're open to that discussion as well, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Anson. And could you, for the, for folks who are watching this, could you just remind us when the deadlines are for the various programs? We've just talked about a bunch of them all at once, but let's, for clarity's sake, for the dairy.
Okay, I'm going to it's October 1, right, Diane?
Yes, everything that's open right now. The FAIRS grants had an early a deadline of August 20th due to the fact that their requirement to expend their funds was September 15th, not receive them, expend them. So we need to get checks out to the fairs fairly quickly, so the rest of the applications of dairy, producer and processor, and non-dairy working lands are all September 30th. or October 1, September 30th at midnight, or you might as well say October 1.
Okay,
And that's
Great.
to get the information in as written in your legislation, not deemed complete until the agency says so, but they have to submit an application by end of day on the 30th of September.
okay. And does the money have to be expended by a certain date? Is there an audit of folks who are going to? Be a-
None of those were required in statute. We expect that we're able to move through the process once an application is submitted. If it's correct, it's very quick to move out the door. But if it's got incorrect issues, we are trying to work with farmers to get them corrected. We have a automatic 7-day return on the computer system. We are providing so to speak, 3 strikes. We'll send it back 3 times. And work with people, encourage them to work with farm viability, get the assistance they need. But after 3 strikes, we do have the ability in the application to deny a specific line item if they've been given multiple chances to fix it and they haven't, but the rest of the application is okay. We have that ability. We try not to use it. We try hard to get the applicant to fix the issues. But with those returns, we say it could be 2 to 3 weeks before a check goes out. So if a lot comes in on September 30th, so 3 weeks we're hoping by end of October that we are wrapping up and sending grants back. The one thing we've had a question on is the ability to include the milk production in September. For dairy farmers, the payment for that, full payment for that doesn't incur until October 19th. So technically, we would say that, sorry, it's whatever information you have at the end of September, which would be payment on August milk, not September milk. We're trying to work with the cooperatives to see what kind of information they can provide prior to the end of day on the 30th of September and see if that's adequate. We're working with legal to see if there's a way to try to include September milk, but it's a very, very tight turnaround. It would mainly be for those farms that hadn't applied yet or that get their potential for the second application. So we're investigating that. Nothing is final yet. And we need to make it equitable across all types of cooperatives of their ability to provide that information. So, the equity is going to potentially come into play. If one cooperative can get all the information out and the other can't, is it equitable to offer it to half the farms and not the other half? So we have to think those things through. Nothing's final yet. We're working with legal to try to determine what's possible there and the co-ops of what they can provide in a timely manner.
Mike? Thanks,
I
Diane.
just want to add to that although there isn't a condition on expenditure or appropriation in the dairy or the non-dairy program, there is a general condition that all expended money on December 20th does revert for basically allocation to the unemployment insurance fund. So even if money is granted, it has to be expended by December 20th, or it otherwise reverts to the UI fund. And that's a federal CRF condition.
And Mike, that's expended by the agency or expended by the person to whom it was allocated or given?
Well, I will leave that to the agency to opine on. There are some differences of opinion. The Treasury has shifted its kind of guidance on that a little bit. So I would leave that to the agency to answer how they are interpreting that.
We are interpreting out of our hands and check written to the farmer prior to. Our checks will be written into the farmer, I would expect, prior to the end of latest date prior to the end of November, but I would expect probably by November 15th, unless we have for the dairy, those will be expended. The non-dairy working lands, since we haven't reviewed, we're just beginning that review with VITA. We don't know the level of errors, I guess, at this point. We're just digging into those this week. It's Wednesday. So, the dairy world had a lot of errors and now not so many. The more we learn, the more we put up on our FAQs, the more help they're getting from fire viability. We're seeing fewer and fewer errors, so they can go faster and faster. The non-dairy working lands will be an interesting thing of what we're seeing there. And then the ability, but I still think we'll need to be wrapping everything up by November 15th, all checks out the door, which would give people time to cash them and spend them. But the other aspect of we're looking backwards and paying for expenses that have already incurred. So there's multiple ways to do this. You can look forward, and then there's the potential for the audit. Did it really happen or not? Looking backwards is that we already know these economic harm incurred. We're paying for back issues. So the potential of saying we've already, yes, the check went out the door, but the farmer already expended it because they already had those expenses. So we're in a better spot than potentially some that are looking forward where maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. And so there's an audit potential there versus less of an audit potential for our backward looking payment system.
Yeah, and I think also when I think of, for instance, my own situation, I've lost money. I lost money in May, and I'm going to lose money in October because both shows have been canceled. And that is money that would have carried me through the winter to pay for grain, to pay for hay, things like that. So it's, there are a number of ways to look at this. Rodney's been very patient. His hand has been up. So Rodney, why don't you go ahead? Thanks for your patience.
No problem. I'm learning more all the time I'm listening. So I just wanted to verify, Diane mentioned that if you applied for one area grant and you were eligible for a different one, but not that one, it automatically gets switched over, or do you have to refile another application?
Diane, you're muted.
In the non-dairy working lands, it is as you move through answering questions, you are sorted out, so to speak, just the way you answer questions into what pot of money you would receive a grant from. You as an applicant will not see the difference. Internally, it's built into the software that as you answer the questions, yes or no, or put in numbers or whatever you're being asked for, it sorts you out into where you will be paid from. The applicant doesn't have to do anything at all. If you applied for if you applied for a dairy grant, dairy processor or dairy farmer, and got a payment there, but as we discussed earlier and working and Representative and Mr. O'Grady verified that you potentially could apply for other costs or expenses into the non-dairy working lands, you would have to apply a second time. It's not an automatic a dairy application can then automatically be switched into a non-dairy working lands. Did I make it worse, or did I answer your question?
You kind of answered the question. So I filed under the dairy program.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not thinking that I'm going to be eligible to get anything. So should I file in the other one or just wait so I know for sure?
You're well within your rights to apply for the non-dairy working lands. Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? John O'Brien. Go ahead, John.
I had a question on just the big budget, just sort of for your average Vermonter. If, we keep hearing it's sort of a moving fluid number, but the overall state budget has this $180 million hole in it, something like that. Does the budget for AAFM work the same way, where you had a budget and given projections from economists, you were going to have a hole in it? So are there numbers like that where then you have to sort of adapt to a lot less, say, general funds revenue coming in to meet that budget? And then what we've talked about a little bit, is there any any sort of, are there federal dollars, COVID federal dollars to somewhat backfill that hole too? I don't know
So-
how it works.
Yeah, so the agency receives a target along with every other agency and department and state government, that there is a hole. This is how the hole is divided up between all agencies and departments and state government. And your agency needs to hit this target to help meet the hole. The agency was fortunate to be able to utilize the CARES, or request to utilize the CARES funds dollars at the 1.5 million. We will be back. That is how we are meeting our general fund target. So we, as you saw in our crosswalk, we reduced our general fund allocation and backfilled it with CARES Act money. So that is how we met our target. In the process of determining how to get there, we went through several options of, to be honest, all of our sacred cows of the general fund granting programs, if without this CARES fund money, they would have taken a giant hit. We would have cut at least 25% across all of those. Or here's some other options of ways to meet the target required by the agency. So we went through many options. We feel fortunate that we're able to put this proposal in to use the CARES Act funds to backfill our general fund reduction that we had to come up with. So every agency and state government has to come up with that targeted amount, show how you're going to hit it, and what impact does it have. So this has, using the CARES Act money, reduces our impact across our general fund granting programs, as in we're not seeing any reductions in those. 2+2, working lands, farm to school, all of those are whole because of this method of finding our cutback versus other methods. But there's FY22 coming up, so stay tuned.
Mike?
So Nolan from JFO is listening on YouTube, and earlier in your committee discussion, he asked that I reference something, which I think this is a good point to do that. And what he said is that the committee should be reminded that the budget uses a starting point that's compared against the governor's recommendation from January. So to the extent that there were any issues or things that you wanted to highlight or flag back in January or February, that you should raise them again for the appropriations committee. They might not.
Hold on a second. John, I'm going to mute you, John. I hear Maven, what's his name? Brock carrying on. Sorry, Mike.
So the governor's recommendation now might not include some of those issues or things you wanted flagged back in January and February, and you should flag them for the committee again. So that just rolls back into the process, and Nolan wanted me to remind you of that.
So Mike, could you kind of say that again? That the budget uses.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the governor's recommendation is the governor's recommendation, and the appropriations committees have their own starting point. And back in January, you were asked to opine on the budget and make any recommendations or flag any issues that you wanted addressed in the budget. So you're back at that process again with the governor's new recommendation. Any issues or things you wanted flagged in the budget, you should raise again for the appropriations committees, because they will again be looking at the governor's recommendation, but they will also have their own starting point.
Okay.
That makes sense?
If we had concerns back in January about the budget, we should be keeping those in mind. Okay.
Yep.
Great. Thank you. Terry, you've been patient. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I don't know if it's COVID related, but somewhat. But my wife is a dairy nutritionist, and one of her farms in Brandon sent their milk to Thomas Dairy in Rutland, and Thomas Dairy, because of lack of colleges, schools, whatever, has told him that as of August 31st, they will no longer pick up his milk. So he scrambled around and I believe found NFO to take his milk, but they won't take it until October 1st. So he's got pretty much a month of nothing. I really didn't know what to tell him. All we could tell him was say, call the agency. So he probably did.
He did. He did. Representative Norris, we did receive that call. We've provided some potential cheesemakers or small scale dairy processors that may want that milk. Then we can't make that decision for those small businesses. We've reached out, provided those contacts to that farmer to see, and he was appreciative of the potential, but is no guarantee. So in this world of COVID, certainly we have to get copies of the letters that Thomas Dairy sent out because they have to give a certified 90-day notice to a farmer before letting them go. That's in state statute. So if Thomas had called somebody up and said, tomorrow we're not coming to get your milk anymore, there is state statute that says a 90-day notice is required before ending a milk market. So Thomas did do that properly. They provided the letters to the agency. So we have seen those letters, and I believe Thomas does reference the ongoing market situation. I can't quite remember if they say COVID directly, but very clear that their sales are way down. They can't continue to pick up this milk, and they're hopeful, within that 90 days that something will change, but it appears nothing has. So the potential for that farmer, if they can't find any market between the 1st of September and October 1st, I think this is it this week for them. Potentially could they claim that they had to put milk down the drain, and what's the value of that milk? All those kind of things. It's quite possible. It's tell us your story and get us some documentation. So, this is what our milk volume is in, a month ago, we got this much for our milk. We're getting 0 for it now. Can they claim that? We just need some kind of documentation to back up what the claim is, total dollar amount potential claim for the month of September's milk. And maybe they find that someone will take milk a day a week and, so they get something, they don't get everything. Could they claim that difference? Yes. So those are potential as long as they can truly show the issue coming up from COVID. So this one probably, because of what's in Thomas's letter of letting them go, we'd probably need documentation from NFO of they won't pick me up until whatever that date is. And then how do we find a way to clearly calculate and document that lost value of milk? So it's about documentation in the long run, and what numbers can we get, what can be backed up, what's verifiable, but the potential is there. But we are trying to help that farmer find some type of home for their milk. It may not be perfect. 30 days is a difficult time period because, you get set up, somebody gets set up taking it to make cheese and then it's gone. And so 30 days is difficult, but we're trying to help.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Diane. And Rodney's hand is up. Rodney?
Forgot to put it down.
Oh, okay. So if we are looking at the budget, one of the things that I tend to have concerns about, besides working lands, is the 2+2 program. And, I know, Diane, you keep pretty good tabs on what the status is for various students with 2+2. And I'm wondering if there's anything to be said at this point regarding that in terms of this or out years.
Well, I think I am looking for that file right now. I think we were, boy.
I think we just lost Diane. I'm sorry. Hanson, did you wave your hand?
I don't know what happened there. It's hard to get rid of Diane, but we did it. Jeez. Wow.
Oh, maybe she'll tune back in.
She'll be back.
Yeah.
I hope she isn't continuing to give her explanation, but she'll come
Yeah.
back. No, I think as Diane mentioned, those programs we've tried to maintain them, the status quo of them, because we've been able to use some of the CARES dollars to fill those general funds. So I think, we're not adding more dollars to these programs, but we're able to at least maintain them at their current level, and that's a win considering the state's finances. So we hope we can continue to move those forward. So.
Okay, thanks. You don't have any idea off the top of your head what the enrollment looked like, do you, Anson?
As far as the last year or so, it's been strong. I know Diane has been really, Diane keeps close. She's an advisor. Oh, I got a note from Diane. Computer died trying to get in by phone. So it was a complete meltdown.
Oh,
But
no.
my understanding is the program has been, is strong, and they've got a good crop of students, and Diane, has her heart and soul in that program, and she really keeps tabs on all the students and their advisors. And it seems to be going over the last year, seems to be doing, quite well. So.
Great, good. Just while she's trying to get back on, I had my van inspected in Montpelier yesterday, and on the way home, I drove through the most torrential rain. Down starting around, it was south of Randolph. John, I don't know if you got it down in Tunbridge, but I'm telling you, it was hard to stay on the road. And then when I headed down 91, I thought, oh, it looks kind of bright down there. Boy, I went through more torrential rain for quite a while and got down to around John's, Heartland. So hopefully some folks are getting rain, and maybe this upcoming hurricane, Laura, is going to give us some rain, but it's too late. The hay crop is, I don't know, maybe we'll get some second.
No, it's this rain is certainly welcome, but it may be a little too late for a lot of things that have established. Hey, Diane, we didn't mean to get rid of you. Okay. I think I saw a phone come on. I thought I saw a phone.
Hi, Diane.
No.
You may have to hit *6 to unmute yourself.
Oh, now she muted herself.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
Diane.
Okay.
Nice try getting out of answering that question.
Sorry about that. My computer screen went black, and that was that. Can't seem to get it turned back on at this point. So I will, now that my computer is black screen, I can't look up that number, but I will get it to you around the 2+2 program. I can't access it right now, so I will determine that. I think we're close again. We need some information from UVM and VTC with all these changes to their means of education. Is the enrollment the same or not? So I need to determine that as well, but I think we were close to being able to cover everything. Always appreciate other funds, but understand the constraints on this budget. It was level funded, and there is a small amount of carry forward, but I will have to look up those numbers.
Great. And Diane, I truly hope your computer didn't die.
Well, I'm not sure. We'll find out in a bit.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that. So at this point, I'm wondering, committee members, if we have any discussion regarding the budget proposal here. John O'Brien.
No, I apologize for barking dogs. A trail ride went by and that set off my dogs. But disjointed, it's like having 30 horses ride through room 32.
Maeve and Brock at their work, yeah.
But getting back to that, the AAFM budget, Diane, maybe without your computer, I'm sure all these numbers are in your head, but what is the budget and what is the whole you were looking at? Just in sort of ballpark numbers would be good for us to have in the committee.
Yes, Representative. Our overall requirement was, well, it moved a little bit over time. Our beginning number was fine, $450,000. Currently, we're down to $435,000. We got a bit of a reprieve off the higher total. I will pat us all on the back. I'll pat Amy and our business office on the back. We respond right away. We work hard to meet the requirements that are put to us. We offer up everything that's asked of us, and that was recognized by finance and management. And we were early. We gave them all the numbers they asked for, and they came back and said, you know what, you do so much and try so hard for us. We're going to reduce your amount back a little bit. So we got a pat on the head for doing good work, and so our total now off the general fund was $435,000 from the original $450,000. So our business office works really hard at this, and it was recognized by finance and management. So we got a bit of a break. But if you think about our dollars, for us, $435,000 is a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of the overall large state budget is not much. So giving us $25,000 back, how's my math? $15,000 back, is helpful for our budget, but in the scope of the big wide world isn't that much money in the overall large state budget.
And what is the AAFM budget?
We are right around 28 million.
Okay, so Rodney's hand is up, and then Sharon. Rodney, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, my only comment on the budget is I'm sad to see you took the 750 one-time money out of working lands. I think once there's a deadline on the funding. I think after that, there's going to be a great need for the working lands funds. I know myself, I stopped milking cows. I immediately got some beef animals and the equipment to harvest hay in round bales so that it could sell and transport it. But I also know that's not going to be enough to sustain our farm in the long term. So we're having thoughts and discussions about what we're going to do in addition to that. And it's quite possible that, we're going to need to look for some more funding. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that's in this situation. So it's kind of disappointing that we reduce that money at this time. But that's all I got.
Thanks, Rodney. Appreciate that. You were breaking up a little bit, but what I heard you say is that you're disappointed that the amount for working lands was decreased back to the base, the previous base of $594,000.
Right, that 750,000 one time was taken out.
Okay.
And I think
Thank
there's going to be a great need for that as we move forward.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Rodney. So we will be making recommendations to the Appropriations Committee, and we could potentially encourage them to try and find more for working lands. So that's a possibility. Sharon's hand is up. Sharon, you want to go ahead?
Yes, and please forgive me if I'm a little bit slow today because I drove from Kansas City to home in the last 2 days. So my brain was impacted by all the caffeine and all the driving. But so this change in what AAFM has been working toward to drop $435,000 from their operating budget of 28 million. I am assuming that this is administrative funds, and I know we looked at the tables earlier, and because we're in our Zoom world, I only have one device that I'm using, so I can't bring that up like it's a hard copy piece of paper over it while I talk. And yet we've been seeing some of these reductions, like the water quality grants, by $620,000. And so what's the origin of that $620,000 that we're going to lose in water quality grants? That's not part of AAFM. That's I'm trying to get a better view as I'm putting my brain back into the committee and off of the road.
So the representative, the Clean Water Fund Board has met and discussed the decrease in funds available for the Clean Water Fund. So those funds come in from the property transfer tax, the sales tax, rooms and meals, pardon me, and the bottle deposit return. Those funds are down. So overall, everyone who receives clean water funds has been trimmed back to reflect the decrease in revenue.
Thank
so
you.
The 600,000 is our portion of the reduction in the Clean Water Fund monies available.
Thanks for reminding me that. You did say that earlier and it fell out of my brain. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Diane. Any other questions at this point for our witnesses today? Just as a heads up, we will be discussing this again on Friday. If we can possibly come up with a recommendation for approach by the end of Friday, that would be helpful. Anson, did I see you wave your hand? Would you like to say something?
I just appreciate all your attention to this, and we stand ready to get you any information you need over the next few days. I know the budget's the most important thing on the agenda at the legislature right now, and we stand ready to do that. So I just wanted to thank you all for your attention to this, and we'll get through all this sort of challenging times with our finances, but we'll get there.
Well, we really appreciate your input. This is very helpful. So okay, John O'Brien has his hand up again. Thank you, John. Go ahead.
Just while we've got the brain trust here, I wonder of the 650 to 700 dairy farms, do you guys have any estimates of how many of those farms will actually apply for those CRF funds?
Well, we really need to keep messaging that those dollars are available. About 55% of started the application or whatever. We have money left over. We have plenty of dollars that are there, and I think over the next 3 or 4 weeks, we're really starting to offer workshops, encouraging people to get their applications in. The most important thing is all of this, regardless, dairy, vegetable farmers, maple producers, we cannot leave any money on the table. We do not want to do this. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to try to make up for some of the losses and expenses that have occurred on agriculture. So really, it's really important through all your networks to let people know, whether if they're sugar makers or look at these applications. Don't assume that, it's too complicated or we can't get through it, they're not eligible. We're trying to make it really a way for people to find some dollars, whether it's $10,000, $100,000, and some of the working lands money could be more than that over time. So just keep messaging to your constituents. There could be dollars available, and encourage them to try to go through the process.
Vicky has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. And John, I liked your reference to brain trust. We sure need these guys helping us. But for Anson or Diane, whoever could answer this one, when we were taking testimony back in the summer, spring, and some of those bigger farms that were losing $1 million, I don't even know, was it a month or a week or what? But where are they at with applying? They were really in a way upset that we didn't have more money. It just sounded like what you just said, that we have enough money to help them. I just wondered where those bigger farms are at, the dairy.
I think
Diane. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Diane.
As of yesterday, 12 of the LFO size farms funds have been allocated, gone out the door as checks. It's very, well, it's concerning. We get to see what they claim versus the cap, and those LFO size farms, they're just on their milk check decline alone is usually 300,000 to 800,000 of their losses just on the milk check decline, and we're sending out 100,000. So 12 out of the 33 have been paid. There's some in process right now. On the MFOs, it's a smaller number, and they don't all hit the cap. The cap is 56, so some are coming in under that cap, high $30,000, $40,000. So probably, I think that's around 30-ish farms. So certainly people are applying. It's not 100% overall by any. I think one of the things from this application, and it was done purposely, is that it does not do a running total for you. So if you think about your tax form and you've got that column of numbers on the right-hand side, and you're doing your deductions, or you're doing that math all the time on the side, this application does not do that. It doesn't show the farmer, the applicant, what their award would be at all. And so we're encourage everybody to put in all their information, all their documentation, and then the award is calculated. And they receive a letter that you're approved for X amount of money or not. That was done somewhat purposely, so people wouldn't be saying, "Oh, if I do this, I'll get some more money." So not, ginning up, economic harm that may or may not be true just to get to a certain dollar amount. So I know that some farms put in a lot of information. I think the largest farms have figured out that once they put in their milk price information, that caps them out and they're done. So I think we're seeing more larger MFOs and LFOs figure that out, come in quickly, and if that's the only thing they're claiming, we can turn those around really quickly if the data is correctly done. So I think certain types of information are getting out there in certain ways. So interesting to see things change as this application's been open, but certainly more to go. And we're trying hard to get that word out there to apply now and keep going.
Thanks, Diane. Along these lines, as I referenced earlier, and I've been hearing this also from some folks, and I heard reference to this with dairy farmers and wanting to be able to include the September 30th, or the September milk checks. One of my big shows is the New York Sheep and Wool Festival, which is the third weekend in October. That's going to, I'm taking a huge hit on that. And I've been told that there might be a way, as I apply for one of these non-dairy grants, to somehow include that in the application, and I'm wondering if it makes sense for us to consider extending the date to, instead of September 30th, to October 30th, or if we can just let people reference these losses that would happen in October. We did it for the fairs too. I think Steve Collier and Allison figured out a way to allow the, excuse me, the October fairs to be able to apply for some of this grant money as well. Diane,
so I think Representative Partridge, you're possibly, I think in Vermont with the fairs, the governor made a pronouncement in May that all fairs and field days are canceled. So right. We have that record in Vermont very clearly that no fair or field day is happening across the board in Vermont. So when we get outside of the state, I'll use your since you used an example, I'll use that. If a person wanted to claim the loss of revenue from that activity, so we would need the information from that organization that puts on that Sheep and Wool Festival in New York, documentation to you that this is canceled. We're not doing this. So you found that out before September 30th. it's going to be canceled. The potential to show in 2019, my revenues were such. 2020, they're going to be zero because this was canceled in advance. It was canceled prior to September 30th. It was officially canceled, not Representative Partridge writes in that was canceled. We're going to need something official, either from the organization that sponsors it or maybe state of New York that all activities are canceled. I don't know what's available. But there's a difference between the event being canceled and I'm just not going to go. So we need to show that differentiation of I'm concerned for my health. This is a large activity. I'm just not going to go versus it was canceled outright. So we just have to have it. It's kind of like, being in school of document what happened, show your math on how you got to the numbers you want, and turn it in. But tell us everything you can about why this is related to COVID, why this is an issue. And, we have to look through every one of those. And if we get to some that are concerning, the state has worked with, a consultant on interpreting the CARES Act, and we work with our own internal legal counsel. And does this meet all the requirements? Can we accept this or not? So we're pretty careful about that. We don't want anybody to get caught in a spot where we shouldn't have expended this money, CARES Act money, on this type of economic harm. So we're very careful, but tell us what the issue is, document it, provide all the information you can, and then we'll work it through and determine if we can or we can't expend the money.
And so I've been asking these questions, and I'm asking them more for people who might be viewing and thinking about applying. And so there are websites for both of those shows, and I probably have emails that I can access to. But I will say downloading and screenshotting and all of that is it's testing my abilities. But I'm just trying to encourage people to move ahead. And what I'm hearing you say is that if I can document that I've lost revenue from the New York Sheep and Wool Festival being canceled in October, that will potentially count as I move forward with this application.
Yeah, I certainly think it could. And I think it is all about, what can you document? And the application itself asks for a document upload. The document, and I think this was kind of a learning curve on the dairy application. I uploaded one page. I'm done. It won't take any other documents. It's like, well, you've got to make a multi-page document to upload. And so we have tips on our website about using, other computer programs like a Microsoft Word or something like that, where you can add all this information into one document, save it, and upload one document with multiple pages of why this is happening. So we had to get past that in the dairy application of, I uploaded one page of numbers. Well, there's no explanation. No, what are you trying to tell us? So you don't need to write a book, but you gotta give us more to go on than just a set of numbers or, one page. It's tell your story, justify why this is a COVID expense, and then it certainly can be considered. And sometimes they're sent back of not enough justification. Tell us more, or how can you justify these numbers? Do you have any documentation that would justify 2019 sales? Or so we try to do the back and forth. Certainly, we try hard to get to yes. That is the goal. We want this money to go out the door, as Secretary Tebbett said. We're trying hard to get to yes, but we got to have enough documentation that meets the CARES Act for the granting of these dollars.
Great. Thanks, Diane. John O'Brien's hand is up, and then Vicki. John?
Carolyn, just to follow up on your question, Diane, that while there are traditional fairs like the Tunbridge Fair or Champlain Valley that got applications in, I'm sure, for CRF funds, were the other, thinking of the Tunbridge Fair summer, were the other sort of agricultural themed festivals like the Vermont Sheep and Wool Festival or a tractor pull or an oxen pull or a horse show, were they all eligible for some of these dollars?
there was some further language in the statute, which I'm trying to remember. I'm going to paraphrase badly, but had to be known to us or registered as a fair. And I know you've got Michael Grady on as well, and he may be able to access this right away. But there were some more requirements than just existing. So fairs and field days that received stipends from us certainly qualified. I think Maple Festival ended up in there. I don't know of those others. It ended up being, I believe, 12 or 14 that applied in full. Maybe Anson or Allison has a better memory on those. I've been a little deep in dairy, so I may not have those other numbers in my head quite as clearly.
I think you're right, Diane. There was language about to be registered with the state. Mike's on now, so he probably has the language in front of him. Go ahead, Mike.
Yep, it says to be eligible for an award, an agricultural fair shall be registered with the agency. And then they have to demonstrate lost revenue between March 1 and September 1 due to COVID.
So to
So I
answer
don't
your
believe sheep and
question,
wool is.
right, Representative O'Brien, I believe there's 14 fairs that are registered with the agency that would be eligible under the fairs grant. But I know there's other programs that they could apply for underneath the COVID relief. So maybe through ACCD, we could look into that and get that information too if you wish. But not in the fairs program.
Great. Thanks, Allison. Thanks, everybody. Vicky.
Carolyn, I'm a little worried about your revenues and stuff. With the
Yeah, me
loss.
too.
But my question actually, Carolyn, is for you in a way, and I don't know if anyone else wants to elaborate, but I was like 2 weeks ago, there was an open farm day. I don't know if any of you went to anything, but I went to a local sheep farm, and they had a really nice, cute little, her husband built her a little, almost like a shanty that was a gift shop for her wool and a few other products on knitting and stuff. She makes little kits, and has a good website. So for Carolyn, for you and the others that you're in touch with the sheep industry, so to speak, are more of innovations happening out there since you've lost those shows? Like for you personally, a website or a little shop on your property or a tour day, or what's happening in the sheep world?
Well, it's really tough. And I'll tell you that I don't have, I mean, I have a place where I could have a shop, but right now my yarn is at a yarn shop in Marshfield. And it's just there because that's where I keep it generally through the winter and then take it down to Maryland. I already have a website. There hasn't been a lot of activity on it. And in fact, there's basically been none. And I will also say what was really disappointing is that the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival did a virtual show, and we all submitted pictures and information and what have you. And for me, there was essentially nothing, so so I might be using my Social Security to pay for grain and hay. Anyway, the animals have to keep going. So that's, just the way it is. So, but thanks, Vicki, for thinking about me. Yeah. So any other questions or input regarding, any other take on sheep? John or Sharon, you both raised sheep. Anything to say? John.
Carolyn, certainly COVID related. One problem seems to be there's a enormous bottleneck now with slaughterhouses.
Yeah.
That, I stupidly waited until we were done with our spring session to call the Green Mountain Smokehouse in June, and they said they were booking already in January. And so I don't know if this is true across the board and what the agency, if anything, is doing to help open the spigot there.
Yeah, this is a huge problem, and I think that it may, I mean, here again, it's the timing issue. It may create a situation where people are not going to be able to have their animals processed in order to sell when they typically would. And I think that that actually is potentially an allowable loss of revenue. Diane, I'm not quite sure. You're unmuted, so maybe you want to comment on that.
Well, the ability to get animals into slaughter, we had a farm, well, it's related. They sell heifers to another dairy farm, and because of the COVID, impact on milk prices, the farm that usually buys heifers ready to go wasn't. So now the farm who usually raises them has no place to go with them. They keep eating, and there's a loss of revenue because of the no sale of those heifers, and then the cost of feeding them. So if you can document all that, the usual price the farmer pays for a heifer ready to go is $1,000, and so you're not getting that $1,000 of revenue, and then feeding them if you can get the grain company potentially, or even trying to document the ration in some way of it costs this much per day to feed those heifers because they're big and they're hungry and I can't sell them, so they've been 30 days at this ration. So there's ways to do that. So an animal that you can't get into slaughter that you're having to keep, the potential through September 30th is to look at that and say, I have tried to get this animal into slaughter at X slaughterhouse. Maybe it's a written note from the slaughterhouse that we're booked, and here's the first date this animal can go in. Maybe it's March of 2021. You can claim up through September 30th. You can't claim those outer months because they haven't happened yet. But you could claim on September 30th that I have fed this animal for August and September, and there's no way for me to get it to slaughter, and this is how much it's cost me. So there are ways to do it, but you can't go into the future. All of our programs are backward looking. So you couldn't go out into October, November, December and say, and January and February of next year and say it's going to cost me this, because we're not a forward-looking program. We're a backward-looking program. And the ability to do the fair is because you got your sheep and wool festival is because you got a cancellation within the time frame of March through September.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Timing is important.
Right. Sharon, did you have a question or a comment?
I know that I have heard from rural Vermont about their desire to make it easier for people to do on-farm slaughter for larger numbers. I'm thinking that, a different take with the same topic is making sure that farmers know that that is an option, within the currently existing numbers, and that they're well aware of the way to do that within the letter of the law in the state. I don't worry too much about it because we have sheep, and we don't have that many compared to some of these other operations that that may still have a small flock or herd, and they're not a high priority for the slaughterhouses. They're not like the regular customers that the slaughterhouses naturally prioritize and have ongoing scheduling with. But I'm especially concerned, not just because of the COVID, but the combination of this along with the poor hay year. This is going to be hard on our farmers, and I hope that people begin to take seriously the buy local thing.
Diane, do you or Allison want to comment?
I just had a question for Diane. I know that our meat division just had some new announcement about slaughtering, and I'm wondering if that's going to help locally, Diane, to open up new areas for folks to be able to utilize for slaughtering.
So the announcement that occurred with our meat inspection, we have received USDA certification to have our state operated only slaughterhouses, so the state is the only entity providing inspection, to be able to sell that product across state lines. So this was a big thing, Iowa and Vermont, and maybe one or two other states. So this is very select. Our meat inspection group did a great job applying for this and showing that we have a very strong program here in Vermont. That opens markets. For those who do. So Bros Slaughterhouse up in Northeast Kingdom has only done state level inspection. They've never gone to federal. Now, if you brought your animal in there, got it slaughtered and processed under inspection at Bros, you could now sell this meat anywhere, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, etc. You could go anywhere across the country with that meat now, but that doesn't expand the capacity of Bros. So it doesn't expand capacity across the board of how many animals can go through. I think the other thing that's important is the on-farm slaughter regulations. It's really for the consumption of the owner of the animal, not for sale at retail or for sale to others. So there's some requirements in there, and I would need to refresh my memory, but it's not as if on-farm slaughter could be done, packaged, and sold at retail. So, or sold to someone else. That's really for your own consumption. So if you went in and more than one person owned the animal going in, then you can, I think it's split the carcass, and maybe Mike O'Grady's on. He can look that up. But I think maybe there were some changes to go to quarter of an animal.
Didn't we do multiple owners?
Yep.
Yeah.
You clarified with USDA that multiple owners, multiple persons owning the animal was authorized, and that you went to quarters as well.
Yeah. So, but that's for your own use, not to sell. So yes, that may open up some slots, so to speak, of on-farm slaughter, but it would not assist those who want to take that animal to market, as in, I want to sell the meat from these animals.
But it would allow for like, let's say you buy a share of an animal before it's slaughtered, and then it, and 4 people own the animal, and maybe I'm assuming that they can just pay the farmer for their share, and then no, Mike? No.
So on-farm slaughter is conducted underneath the personal slaughter exception to the Federal Meat Inspection Act.
Yep.
So basically, the farmer needs to sell you the animal, right? And he or she can sell it to multiple persons. Then that person has to arrange for its slaughter. The farmer is prohibited from actually engaging in the slaughter.
Right.
So it's the personal slaughter exception to the Federal Meat Inspection Act.
Okay, the farmer couldn't be one of the owners. Like the farmer couldn't end up with a quarter of the animal or a half of the animal.
Technically, I think the owner of the animal could gift. I think the owner of the animal could then probably gift a portion to the farmer.
Okay.
But the owner of the animal couldn't then sell to the farmer.
Right. Okay.
Um,
All right. So there is an opportunity potentially for a little bit more on-farm slaughter, but I think, and I too have been contacted by rural Vermont, and I think one of the points I made was that it was important that folks who were participating in on-farm slaughter do what they needed to do, which I think, I don't know if I'm using the proper language, but they needed to register with the agency to let the agency know that they were doing this. And I think they're also supposed to report the number of animals that they are processing. And Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
That is correct. There are limits. They have to maintain a record of slaughter conducted, and they have to report quarterly to the secretary about their slaughter activity.
Yeah, okay, thanks. All right, we are approaching the end of our time. It's about 10:25. And I really want to thank, Anson had to drop off, but I really want to thank Diane and Allison for joining us and helping us as we consider this. We will be meeting again on Friday from 8:30 to 10:30 in the morning. And hopefully Cynthia will be able to join us. Cynthia Browning is now part of our committee, and I'll welcome her formally on Friday. I've already had a nice conversation with her by phone, but we appreciate her being in the committee, and she's going to view this so that she gets herself up to speed. And so we'll be meeting again on Friday, as I said, from 8:30 until 10:30. And please be thinking about the budget. We have to make a recommendation to APROPS. And so be thinking about this and making some decisions about what your recommendations would be. So are there any final questions or comments before we end? I am seeing none. So Linda, you can take us off, and we'll see you on Friday.